So for several years now, Russia and Iran have had a strategic partnership. It must be said that Iran and China have a strategic partnership. And Russia and China have a strategic partnership. You see where this goes, right? And yearly they also do joint naval drills, the three of them together off the coast of Iran. Now, supposedly, Russia and Iran are still on track to sign a new, improved strategic partnership in October, right? That's the last word we have. What the details of this new, deeper, stronger strategic partnership will be, I don't know. It's unlikely, but it's not inconceivable that they could include a mutual defense clause like the Russians just signed with North Korea, effectively making them actually military allies, akin to NATO. That's not impossible. I'm not so sure Russia's willing to go that way yet, but maybe, right? Maybe they're that angry. That's possible. But quite obviously, there's a huge amount of Russian-Iranian military cooperation, intelligence sharing, and military transfer going on right now. Russians and Iranians fought side by side in Syria, remember, against Western forces, against jihadis, of all stripes there, and gained a lot of respect for each other. Qasem Soleimani gained a lot of respect in Russian military circles, from what I've heard. We have seen the Iran transfer to Russia initially some Shahed drones, and then the rights to produce their own variants of them. The rights there. Now, I know there's continuing talk about other types of drones and ballistic missiles from Iran that may have happened, may not. Who knows at this point? I haven't seen any firm evidence. But in the past week, there's been lots of talk, week plus, of Russian transfer of military equipment to Iran. Now, immediately after the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, the Hamas political leader and chief negotiation diplomat in Tehran, he was killed on the evening, on the attending of the new Iranian president, Masoud Pezeshkian. Sorry, my brain is dying here after an hour already. He was attending the inauguration, and he was assassinated there. And there's a lot of misinformation, but obviously Israel was responsible. And immediately after that, and it was declared and assumed that there would be an Iranian military response, there were reports, credible reports, that there was basically a non-stop flights of Russian Il-76 military transports over the Caspian, back and forth to Iran, transferring military something. And this wasn't reported. Russia and Iran, their governments, their media didn't officially acknowledge any of this, but it was initially reported in the Israeli media and the Kiev regime's media, or propaganda, and then later some in the Western media, that Russia was transferring to Iran. First, Russia is one of their most powerful electronic warfare complexes, the Murmansk BN, long range, very powerful, capable of lots of different operations. Then there was also some mention of Iskander ballistic missiles. That one seems unlikely to me, but the Israeli media was reporting it. And now, in the last week, the New York Times has reported that Russia has also been transferring S-400 air defense systems to Iran. Is that true? Does Russia have S-400 air defense systems to spare at this point? I don't know. I don't know how many they have in inventory. I don't know anyone else who does know either. But it's interesting that the New York Times was reporting this. So Is Iran yet going to launch a major military retaliation that would include the entire axis of resistance, Hezbollah, Kataib Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen? Very probably, I would say, yet. They may be taking this extended time to hook up and network Russian air defense, if Russia has provided it to them in electronic warfare, expecting an Israeli either counter-retaliatory strike or even a preemptive strike when they sense that Iran is about to go. They've been talking about that. The Americans have been talking about that. So obviously Russia is providing something. At the minimum, Russia is providing satellite and other intelligence to Iran, right? At a minimum. And probably some level of military equipment. But Russia and Iran are now, I think strategic partners doesn't go far enough at this point. They understand they're in a war with the U.S., with U.S.-led Western global hegemony together, that they fall, they rise or fall. The multipolar world is born or dies, by them and China also, and possibly a few others. And they're taking a look at what each has, what assets, what particular arrows each of them has in their respective military and intelligence quivers, and saying, oh, that's nice. I could use that, and then you could probably use this, and that's what the strategic partnership means at this point. When you hear military technical cooperation, it's not a joke, and it has to. I want to say it right out. Russia has supposed treaty allies in the Collective Security Treaty Organization, Kazakhstan, and Belarus and others. But who has provided real military support for Russia in their time of need? Iran, not Kazakhstan, not Central Asian states, and Lukashenko just playing his usual games because he doesn't have any room left for maneuver. But the Russian-Iranian friendship, alliance, I'll go that far, even if it's not a mutual defense clause declared yet. It's a military alliance. It's closer than ever, even after the Russian government got along good with Raisi, but they also appear to have good relations with Pezeshkian so far. I don't expect anything to change in that regard. Everything looks like it's only accelerating in that direction. And Russia also sees it as part of the payback they promised to the U.S. You make problems for us on what are geopolitical red lines for us, well, then we're going to make problems for you and what are geopolitical red lines for you. And right, here's this convenient crisis going right along. And there was a CNN report just over a week ago that Russia was about to transfer anti-ship missiles to the Houthis for use against U.S. warships and possibly other Western Israeli-aligned shipping in the Red Sea. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but CNN certainly does. It's a possibility. Supposedly, Russia was talked down from that. But after these latest escalations, are they going to be talked down by anything in the future? I very much doubt it. So, whereas up until 2 years ago, Russia very much tried to maintain a balanced, business-like relationship with Israel, that's gone out the door in the last 2 years. I mean, the geopolitical bloc, Russia and China, they always say, we're not interested in geopolitical blocs. And it doesn't matter because geopolitical blocs on the other side are interested in you, and that's forcing, everyone to take a side at this point. You're either with us or you're against us. And the Americans keep saying that to everyone. Well, some people are choosing to be on the other side of that calculus. And so Russia and Israel are now, Russian-Israeli relations are now very bad. And you'll notice that Abbas, the Palestinian Authority leader, was just in Moscow, where in one of Putin's summer residences outside of Moscow, apparently him and the boss had a 3-hour sit-down, which is pretty substantial. And so I really want to know. I don't expect to see Russian troops in Palestine, but Palestine also just had a meeting with China. Quite obviously, Russia and China, which had previously tried to stay above the fray on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, that's out the roof, right? I mean, they're not going to send. They don't have the power projection to send troops or jets to defend Palestine, but obviously they are galvanizing politically the rest of the world, which is horrified by what's going on, and seeing this genocidal monster Netanyahu receive 56 standing ovations, or 58, whatever it was, from the U.S. Congress. And the rest of the world, I mean, it makes it easier for Russia to make their case in Ukraine, when they, at the same time, all of this is going on to the Palestinians. That's a little cold-blooded to say, but it's very true. And I personally can't think of anything that would help Russia more than if a major war kicked off between Israel and Iran right now. Because that would mean more military assets. The U.S. can't even provide enough air defense interceptor missiles or artillery shells for the Kiev regime, much less supply them to both the Kiev regime and Israel. And while there's certainly not complete overlap of military supplies, it would be two very different conflicts. There is enough, and there is some, and particularly air defense interceptor missiles are a crucial thing there. So Russia and China very much have an interest in seeing, right? China, if U.S. gets involved in a fight against Iran in the Middle East, even if it's just long-range strikes, that puts off for another year or 2 or 3 any possibility of the U.S. provoking something with China, because that's more assets being used up. So whatever they may say publicly, Russia and China are probably at some level make a calculation. Maybe there are cons as well, but certainly the argument can be made that it would be to their benefit to see the U.S. Getting bogged down in another conflict in the Middle East. They can't even play whack-a-mole successfully against the Houthis in Yemen, much less a full-scale war with Iran and the entire axis of resistance. The U.S. has been trying to avoid it, I believe, but they also can't stop supporting Israel. They just can't do it. It's politically impossible in the U.S. It's amazing the amount of political control, the power that Pact has in the U.S. Trump was just talking about it recently, about how powerful Pact is. He was actually saying they're not as powerful as they used to be, but he was actually speaking in very complimentary terms, because he would be an even bigger supporter, him and Vance, than Biden is, because then it wouldn't just be U.S.-Israel. It would be he also has good personal relations with Netanyahu, which Biden doesn't. So I still expect a large-scale Iranian response. I think it won't be the pantomime that it was last time. And I think Russia, in multiple ways, may be helping them prepare for it right now. So hold on to your hat. It could be a major war in the Middle East could be breaking out yet. And again, I don't think Russia and China will get directly involved, but I believe they'll very much give almost as much support to Iran as the U.S. and the West are giving to Ukraine. I mean, tit for tat, right? Proxy, you want to play proxy war? We can play proxy war too.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty astounding, too, even just that all these points that you make, Mark, had me thinking, too, over the course of what's been happening in Gaza, right? You don't have, let's say, Netanyahu going to Moscow or Netanyahu going to Beijing and getting any kind of applause, as he doesn't even get an invite. And then you were talking about this support for Iran. I mean, you had China's foreign minister, Wang Yi, literally call the new acting foreign minister in Iran and say, we defend your right. We uphold your right to defend yourself, which is in all intents and purposes.
And I mean, when they're talking Palestine, it has to be said that Russia and China recognize a Palestinian state, as does most of the rest of the world outside of the West. Not just the people, not just the nation, but the Palestinian state, which Israel is militarily occupying and ethnic cleansing and annexing.
Yeah, so we have this alignment going on, which I think many people in the collective West who are so critical of Russia, China, and Iran don't see. But now you have the Western
media. They don't want to see it. Yeah. They see it, but no. They've got to fight over something sometime. They can't possibly cooperate against us. They've been saying that since 2010, 2009, 2010, when I was at the LSE. Russia and China will never cooperate long term. There's too many interests, and as wrong as horrible as the man was, and as wrong as he was about many other things, Zbigniew Brzezinski, may he rot in hell, very much talked about the emerging axis of the aggrieved. The countries that the U.S. was pissing off in their push for hegemony around the world that were growing to cooperate. Not because Russia and China and Iran have anything really in common ideologically or politically or religiously, other than a vision of a shared multipolar world not dominated by U.S.-led Western global hegemony. But turns out that's enough if you push them enough. And
well, I wanted to ask you your final comments then, Mark, on this, because in Foreign Policy Magazine there's a really interesting recent article on how the axis of evil is overhyped. And they're talking about Russia, China, Iran, and now the DPRK, because you mentioned earlier, Mark, about Russia, the DPRK, being also very much aligned militarily. So, Mark, can you correct the record here? I mean, first we have the axis of evil rhetoric coming up again. The ghost of John Bolton never seems to go away. But talk about the reality of the situation, because what this so-called expert at the neocon rag Foreign Policy Magazine is saying is that this is all temporary, that everything is just simply bilateral. There's
if U.S. hegemony goes away tomorrow, if they stop trying to force their will on the rest of the world, yeah, it would. But I don't think that's likely to happen. I don't think the U.S. is politically capable of giving up U.S.-led Western global hegemony. The Europeans would freak out if the U.S. They sometimes seem more, at least this slate of leaders, seem more committed to it than sometimes the U.S. does. They were so happy to have the assumed U.S. role as hegemon come back when Trump was replaced with Biden. They were like, oh, you were a little weird there for a while. You're back. Lead us. Lead us, hegemon. Lead us. They were so happy to have their hegemonic master back. But this is just, again, this is that hopium and copium that they've been saying for the last 10 years. And if the obvious China's refusing to bow to U.S. sanctions over Russia, and the rest of it has to be said, not just China, the rest of the world as well. India is not included in that, right? The language used by China or by the U.S. now against China-Russia trade is calling China a decisive enabler or something of the sort. Now, notice they don't mention India because it's too geopolitically important a pivot point for them. But actually, in terms of expansion of trade, not just the existing total of trade, but in terms of sheer growth, Russian-Indian trade has jumped even more than in growth rate terms than Chinese-Russian trade has jumped. So, and then the military transfer that's going on between Russia and Iran, again, both sides giving to both sides. And then if you don't think that there's intelligence sharing going on between both of them and China as well, and if they're not transferring to China everything they learn about U.S. weapon systems and tactics and everything that's going on and vice versa, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. This is hopium and copium. I would counter to this, the axis of evil is overhyped. NATO is overhyped. NATO unity, right? How unified are Hungary and Slovakia behind this proxy war going on? How unified is NATO bitching back and forth to each other about the spending and who's spending what? And Germany's like, oh, yeah, we want to increase spending. Can we count the money we're spending on roads as that's military spending and just call it even? Cool? Are we cool? You know, I mean, talk to me again about unity there. The U.S. just blew up Germany's energy pipeline. And, Stockholm Syndrome German leaders are parroting this. No, NATO unity, Western unity is overhyped. That